The smell of a good mechanic shop is the most honest scent in the world. It is a blend of hydraulic fluid, stale coffee, and the sharp ozone tang of welding torches that tells you exactly where you stand. I stood under the hydraulic lift in the back bay of Sal's auto body, my neck craned upward, looking at the underbelly of my 1968 Mustang Fastback. I bought this car new the year I got my first promotion at the logistics firm. I restored it bolt by bolt when I retired. I know every weld, every seal, and every vibration of this machine. It is an extension of my own body. When the engine stutters, I feel it in my chest. When the alignment is off, I feel it in my knees. For the last month, the car has felt wrong. It wasn't something I could point to on a diagnostic chart. It was a phantom drain on the battery that left the starter sluggish on cold mornings. It was a faint, rhythmic interference on the AM radio, a click, click, click that shouldn't be there. I had mentioned it to my younger brother Richard last Sunday over roast beef and potatoes. "It's probably just your hearing aid, Sam," Richard had said, cutting his meat with that precise, surgical delicacy he learned in law school. He didn't look at me. He looked at my hands, watching for a tremor. "Electronic interference. Or maybe you're just imagining it. The smell of a good mechanic shop is the most honest scent in the world. It is a blend of hydraulic fluid, stale coffee, and the sharp ozone tang of welding torches that tells you exactly where you stand." He smiled when he said it. "I'm not imagining it, Richard," I had snapped, perhaps a little too defensively. "And my hearing aids are Bluetooth calibrated." "Okay, Sam, okay," he had soothed, holding up a placating hand. "I'm just saying, maybe it's time we talked about a driver or a service. It's safer." Safer. That was his favorite word lately. He used it like a bludgeon. "Wasn't?" I asked, breaking my reverie. Sal was standing next to me, wiping his hands on a rag that was more grease than fabric. He is a man of few words, a 60-year-old virtuoso of internal combustion who treats cars better than most men treat their wives. He clicked his flashlight on, the beam cutting through the shadows of the chassis. "Battery tested fine, Sam," Sal grunted. "Alternator is pulling strong. No shorts in the dash." "She's not clean," I insisted. "There's a parasitic draw. I know it. And the radio interference, it's rhythmic." Sal looked at me. He didn't give me the pitying look Richard did. He didn't look for the senility in my eyes. He looked at me with the respect of one mechanic to another. "If you say it's there," Sal said. He walked under the rear axle. He ran the beam of the flashlight along the exhaust pipe, up into the wheel well, tracing the fuel line. He stopped. The beam of light held steady on a spot just above the gas tank, tucked into a recess of the frame rail that was almost impossible to see unless you were looking for rust. Sal went still. I asked, stepping closer. Sal asked. His voice was low, devoid of humor. My stomach dropped, a sensation like an elevator cable snapping. "No." Sal reached up. He grunted, prying something loose. It made a sharp metallic clink as the magnets disengaged from the steel frame. He pulled his hand down and held it out to me. Sitting in his calloused, oil-stained palm was a small black box. It was about the size of a deck of cards, wrapped in matte black tape with a small antenna stub protruding from one end. And on the side, blinking with a slow, malevolent rhythm, was a tiny red light. Blink, blink, blink. I stared at it. I felt the blood drain from my face. I reached out and took it. It was heavy, dense. "That's not a factory part," Sal said dryly. "It's a tracker," I whispered. "High end," Sal noted, pointing to a small mesh circle on the side of the casing. "See that? That's a mic. It's not just tracking where you go, Sam. It's listening. It's got a SIM card inside." I felt a wave of nausea. I thought about the conversations I had in this car. Calls to my broker, calls to my doctor. Me singing along to Sinatra when I thought no one was listening. Someone was listening. Someone was mapping my life, second by second. I asked. The word came out as a croak. "Let me check the serial," Sal said. "I got a buddy in private security. He owes me for a transmission job on his Audi." Sal took the box back. He walked to his small, glass-walled office in the corner of the garage. I watched him pick up the phone. I watched him type numbers into his computer. I stood alone in the bay, surrounded by the smell of cold metal and betrayal. I tried to think of who would do this. My competitors? I had been retired for 7 years. The logistics game moved too fast for old grudges. A thief? Thieves don't buy $500 trackers to steal a classic car. They just hotwire it. 10 minutes passed. They were the longest 10 minutes of my life. I paced the concrete floor. I thought of Richard again. I thought of his concern. "Let me hire you a driver, Sam." Was he worried I would get lost? Was he worried I would crash? Sal came out of the office. His face was grim. He wasn't looking at the tracker anymore. He was looking at me with a profound, heavy sadness. "Sam," he said. "I'm standing, Sal." "It's registered to a private investigation firm downtown," Sal said. "Arrowhead Investigations. But the billing address for the account, it goes to a shell company." The world stopped. The noise of the impact wrench in the next bay faded to silence. The hum of the overhead lights vanished. Red Lion. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I wasn't 72 years old in a cold garage. I was 12. I was standing in the backyard of our childhood home in Oak Park. We were building a treehouse. I was doing a hammering because he was too small. We needed a name for our secret club. Richard had held up his favorite stuffed animal, a tattered red lion. "Red Lion Club," he had chirped. "No girls allowed." It was our code. It was the name of the LLC I helped him set up for his first business, the one that failed. It was the name on the trust fund I established for his kids, Red Lion Ventures. "It's Richard," I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded like grinding gears. Sal asked. "My brother," I confirmed. "The brother whose gambling debts I paid off 3 times. The brother whose mortgage I cover every month because he says the market is tough." He wasn't tracking me to keep me safe. He was gaslighting me. He was telling me I was crazy for hearing the interference caused by the bug he planted. He was building a file. He wanted to prove I was incompetent. He wanted to show a judge that I was wandering, erratic, unfit to manage my own affairs. He wanted the trust. I looked at the black box in Sal's hand. It blinked at me. Blank, blank, blank. It was the heartbeat of a predator. I leaned against the workbench, feeling the cold steel bite into my lower back. I realized then that the brother I remembered, the little boy holding the red lion, was dead. He had been replaced by a man who looked at me and saw a walking ATM that was taking too long to dispense the final payout. If you have ever sacrificed your own financial security to save a family member, only to have them turn around and use your generosity as a weapon against you, listen closely. If you've ever had the person you protected the most become the person you need protection from, then you understand the ice that formed in my veins in that moment. I looked at that tracker, and I didn't see a gadget. I saw a declaration of war. I wish someone had warned me that blood is thicker than water, but money is thicker than blood. If you want to see how a logistics expert takes a predator for a ride, hit that subscribe button, because I didn't smash that tracker. I decided to use it. "I'm going to smash it," Sal said, reaching for a heavy ball-peen hammer on the bench. "No," I said. Sal stopped, the hammer raised. "Sam, he's tracking you." "No," I repeated. "The mic is on a delay. It records and uploads in bursts to save battery. And the GPS, if we destroy it, he knows I found it. He knows the jig is up. He'll just try something else. He'll put a camera in my house. I walked over to Sal. I took the tracker from his hand. It felt cold. I spent 40 years in logistics, Sal, I said, my voice steady. The trimmer Richard was always looking for, nowhere to be found. Do you know how you catch a thief in the supply chain? You don't fire him. You don't lock the warehouse. You let him think he has the keys. You feed him bad inventory. Sal lowered the hammer. He looked at me, and a slow, jagged grin spread across his grease-streaked face.
Put it back, I said. Put it exactly where you found it. Wipe your prints. You're going to feed him a story, Sal realized. I'm going to give him the show of a lifetime, I said. He wants to prove I'm erratic. He wants to prove I'm hiding assets. I'll give him exactly what he wants. Sal nodded. He walked back under the car. I heard the metallic clink as the magnet reattached to the frame. It's live, Sal said, stepping back and wiping his hands on the rag. Good, I said. I reached into my wallet and pulled out $300 bills. I placed them on the workbench. For your time, Sal. Your money's no good here, Sam, Sal said, pushing the bills back. Just nail the bastard. I climbed into the Mustang. The leather seat creaked, a familiar, comforting sound. I turned the key. The V8 engine roared to life, a deep, guttural growl that vibrated through the floorboards. I checked the rearview mirror. I looked at my own eyes. They weren't the watery, confused eyes of an old man anymore. They were the eyes of a CEO who had just discovered embezzlement in the accounts. I shifted into gear. I pulled out of the garage and into the harsh sunlight of the Chicago afternoon. My brother was watching. Somewhere, on a screen in his high-rise condo, a little blue dot just started moving. He thought he was the hawk, circling the confused mouse. He thought he had the high ground. He was wrong. I wasn't the mouse. I was the maze. I turned the radio on. Static. Click, click. Okay, Richard, I said aloud, knowing the microphone would catch it, knowing he would interpret it as the mumblings of a lonely old man. Let's go for a drive. I turned the wheel, pointing the car not toward home, but toward the industrial wasteland of the meatpacking district. It was time to lay the first breadcrumb. The paranoia that had been my constant companion for weeks evaporated the moment I pulled out of Sal's garage, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity that felt almost like euphoria. I knew he was watching. I could feel the weight of his gaze, not on my skin, but on the little digital dot moving across a screen somewhere in a high-rise condo downtown. Richard was likely sitting in his Herman Miller chair, sipping the single malt scotch I had bought him for his birthday, tracing my path with a finger that had never done a day of hard labor in its life. He thought he was the predator. He thought he was the hawk, circling the confused, erratic mouse. He was wrong. I wasn't the mouse. I was the maze. I turned the steering wheel, guiding the Mustang away from the familiar, safe routes of the suburbs and toward the industrial scar tissue of the city, the meatpacking district. It was a part of town I hadn't visited since the unions were strong in the 80s. A desolate grid of abandoned warehouses, rusted chain-link fences, and potholes deep enough to swallow a hubcap. I imagined Richard's confusion. I imagined him leaning closer to the screen, his brow furrowing. Why is the old man going there? Is he lost? Is the dementia finally taking the wheel? I parked the car in a narrow alleyway between two brick buildings that smelled of wet cardboard and old grease. I left the engine running. The rumble of the V8 echoed off the walls, a low, throaty growl. I rolled down the window. I turned the radio to a jazz station, letting the mournful wail of a saxophone fill the car. Then I waited. I unwrapped the ham sandwich I had packed that morning. I ate it slowly, deliberately. I spoke to myself, knowing the microphone under the chassis was picking up every murmur. I muttered, feigning confusion. It should be here.
The man said under the bridge. Nah. I checked my watch. 45 minutes. That was enough time for Richard to panic. Enough time for him to start wondering if I was buying drugs or meeting a woman, or, best of all, hiding money. I put the car in gear. Maybe the bank, I said aloud. Yes, the big bank. I drove downtown. I didn't go to my local branch with the nice tellers who gave me lollipops. I went to the main headquarters, the marble fortress in the financial district. I parked legally, but I walked with a frantic, jerky energy I had been practicing in the mirror. I checked over my shoulder constantly. I wanted the cameras to see it. I walked into the lobby. Mr. Henderson was waiting for me near the vault. I had called him 5 minutes ago from a burner phone Sal kept in his shop. Henderson is old school. He knows what family betrayal looks like. He didn't ask questions. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice pitched loud enough to carry, loud enough for any listening device to pick up the vibrations of urgency. I need to get into my box. Of course, Samuel, he said smoothly. I need to liquidate, I whispered, leaning in, but keeping my voice intense. Cash, large bills, and the other thing, I need to move it. It's not safe here. Henderson nodded gravely. He led me into the vault. We spent an hour in there. We drank coffee. We talked about baseball. We talked about his grandkids. Then we filled a heavy metal lockbox with old engine parts I had brought in my gym bag. Rusted spark plugs, a seized piston, and about 10 pounds of lead fishing weights. It weighed a ton. When I walked out of the bank, I carried the box with both hands, clutching it to my chest like it held the crown jewels. I hunched over it protectively. I scanned the street. There. A gray sedan, parked 2 cars back, tinted windows. It had been following me since the meatpacking district. The investigator. Good. I put the heavy box in the trunk. I slammed the lid. I patted the fender of the Mustang. Safe now, I muttered. I got in and drove. I headed north, out of the city, toward the lake. The sun was starting to dip, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. I drove to the old family cabin, a place we hadn't used in a decade. It was overgrown, the wood weathered gray, the windows dusty. It looked like a place where secrets went to die. I parked the car around the back, near the old stone well that had dried up years ago. I got out. I opened the trunk and heaved the heavy box out. I dragged a shovel from the leaning shed. I started to dig. The ground was hard, packed clay and roots. I worked for an hour, sweating, groaning, making sure every grunt of exertion was captured by the microphone. I dug a hole right in the line of sight of the access road, a spot perfect for a telephoto lens. I dropped the box into the hole. It landed with a heavy, satisfying thud. "Sorry, Dad," I whispered, loud enough for the bug. "I know you said never to move it, but Richie is greedy. He can't have it." I filled the hole. I patted the dirt down. I stood over it, panting. I pulled a takeout menu from my pocket, a flyer for a Chinese place. I unfolded it and stared at it intensely, turning it this way and that, as if reading a treasure map. "X marks the spot," I said. "North by northwest." I paced it out. I argued with the air. "No, that's not right. It was the oak tree. No, the whale." I acted out the final stages of senility for an audience of one. Then I got back in the car. I drove home in silence. I parked the Mustang in my garage. I walked into my study, poured a glass of scotch, and sat in my leather chair. My phone rang. I looked at the caller ID, Richard. I let it ring 3 times. I took a sip of scotch. The burn was pleasant. I answered, making my voice sound thin and weary. "Hey, Sam," Richard said. His voice was casual, too casual. It had the forced brightness of a man trying to hide his adrenaline. "Just checking in. You home?" "Just a drive, Richie," I said. "Just a nice, long drive. I had to take care of some things." Urgency bled into his tone instantly. "What kind of things, Sam?" "Assets," I whispered. "Safekeeping. You can't trust the banks, Richie, not anymore. The economy, it's all smoke and mirrors. I pull it out. His voice cracked. Sam, that's dangerous. Where is it? Not the house, I said. I put it where Dad used to hide his stash. You remember? The old spot. There was a silence on the line. A heavy, greedy silence. Our father was a factory worker who lived paycheck to paycheck. He never had a stash. He never hid money. It was a lie, a ridiculous fabrication. But Richard wanted to believe it. He needed to believe it. He was desperate. That's smart, Sam, he said, his voice trembling with suppressed excitement. You rest now. You sound tired. Okay, Richie. I hung up. I took another sip of scotch. I opened my iPad. I tapped the icon for the security camera app. The cameras I had installed at the cabin last week, high in the trees, solar-powered and motion-activated. Richard didn't know about them. I watched the live feed. The cabin was dark, silent. The fresh patch of dirt by the well looked black in the night vision. I waited. 3 hours later, headlights cut through the trees. A car pulled up the gravel drive. It wasn't Richard's BMW. It was a rental, smart. The car stopped. The door opened. Richard got out. He wasn't wearing his usual suit. He was wearing jeans and a dark hoodie. He was holding a shovel. He didn't look worried about my health. He didn't look like a concerned brother. He looked like a grave robber. He looked like a ghoul. He walked straight to the fresh earth. He didn't hesitate. He knew exactly where it was. He had been tracking me. I hit record on the iPad. He started to dig. He dug with a frantic, manic energy, throwing dirt over his shoulder. He was sweating, panting, cursing. Clang. His shovel hit the metal box. He dropped to his knees. He clawed up the dirt with his bare hands. He hauled the heavy box out of the hole. He grabbed a rock from the ground and smashed the lock. He pounded on it, screaming, until the latch gave way. He threw the lid open. He reached inside. He pulled out a rusted spark plug, then a handful of lead weights, then a seized piston. He froze. He stared into the box. He turned it over, dumping the junk onto the ground. He shook it, empty. He stood up. He looked around the dark woods. He looked at the hole, and then his face contorted. He threw his head back and let out a scream of pure, impotent rage. It was a silent scream on my screen, but I could feel it. I could feel the vibration of his fury. He wasn't tracking me to keep me safe. He wasn't worried about my memory. He was tracking me to rob me before he committed me. He wanted to steal the imaginary fortune before the courts could lock it down. I saved the video file. I finished my drink. The tracker was still under my car in the garage, blinking its little red eye. Blink, blink, blink. Let him watch. Let him listen. The road ended here.